Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Sorry about that. Welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a really good show today. We talk a lot about epigenetics, but the reality is, how do you fold it all into actionable steps? Very, very important. And we're going to be talking about that with the backdrop of lots of good research that gives us a clear path on what is changing in our bodies and what we can do to salvage that as we age so that we can age better. I can tell you that this past year and a half, 2 years, I've actually aged very quickly. I've seen it. I know now why I've done so. I've been doing some things that even though I remain a very, very lean 62-year-old and very strong, and my blood glucose looks fantastic. I wake up in the morning, my blood sugar is like 67, 72 all the time. But my body's been producing a lot of insulin to achieve that. And insulin is really what ages you fast. We put the blame on glucose, but it's insulin that causes senescence in cells. So I want to reverse the clock right now. I want to get back to where I was a year and a half ago. I've already started to take steps, use supplements. But, you have to have confidence that what you're doing is working, because a lot of times the supplements that we take, you don't feel anything. And really, you don't know anything is happening until a year and a half later. Look at me now, a year and a half later, before I started doing this particular thing. And I now see, oh, my God, I've aged a lot in the past year and a half. So you have to be attuned to your body, but you also have to trust the science in order to get on that train and stay on that train all the way till the end of the ride. Before we get started with our interview, I have to thank our title sponsor, Legendary Foods. Right now, their red velvet tasty pastry is flying off the shelves. They can't keep them in stock because people love them. 20 grams of high-quality, high-leucine protein, less than 1 gram of sugar, 5 net carbs. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. If you're too stingy to buy them, hey, then try winning them. During the commercial breaks, you'll hear a secret word. Put that secret word into an email, send it to onair@superhumanradio.net, and you're entered. And we're giving a lot of boxes of tasty pastry. Originally, it was 1 box a day. It's gone up considerably, so your odds are good. Take a shot and see what happens. And now, without further delay, I'll bring my guest on. And she has been here before. She's Erin Sharoni. How you doing, Erin?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
So that little intro about, you have to trust the science. If you don't trust the science, you're not going to stay on the train. You're going to get off before you get to your destination. That's kind of a dumbing down, but isn't that true?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, to the example that you gave, what I would add, and I know you and I spoke about this as we were catching up before the show, is that the converse is true. So, when we talk about people taking supplements or making certain dietary changes and saying, well, I don't see a difference right now. My muscle isn't getting bigger, or my blood sugar hasn't gone down right away, or, something, I don't see my aging reversing, right? Then what I would say to that is, well, there's lots of stuff you're doing that's aging you and that's making you unwell over time. And you're not seeing that either. So, I use the example in our conversation, Carl, of, hey, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're eating lots of red meat, if you're super stressed out, you might not notice right away that all those things are having a damaging effect at the cellular level, but they are. And I would say the same could be, you could think about supplementation or appropriate dietary changes in the same way in the event that they're working well, but you don't see that change in the phenotype, but it will manifest over time.
Well, it's kind of like if you have a partner that you live with, they see you day in and day out. They don't see you change. Because the changes day in and day out are so minuscule. But then you go and you visited somebody who you haven't seen in 10 years, and you look at them and they look at you and they see the obvious changes. So sure. It's really mystical to me that so much could happen in a year, and you don't notice it until you look back. You can't see it in the moment as you're moving forward. You only see it when you look back. Like I look at myself and I go, man, this past year and a half, I know it's changed. I know what I did. And it's aged me, but I couldn't see it going forward until I got to this point.
Yeah, I would argue, though, you're not alone in that. The last 365 days have aged probably almost everybody in one way or the other. So, I know I certainly have noticed it, and I take real good care of myself. So I think it's a bit of it's a good obvious example, because I think most people, it's like when you see a president who's come into office and you look at the photo of when he's left office, right? And you literally see the accelerated aging process in the side-by-side photo, because you can see that's a great example of what stress does to you.
Yes.
Here are guys who, and they've always been guys to date. Here are guys who have access to the best chefs in the world, trainers, the best doctors. Like if you really were a president who was really interested in like anti-aging and looking great, I guarantee you would still not be able to completely mediate that stress, because stress is a massive driver of accelerated aging. So, yeah.
So you sent me a schwack of studies that you included in your thesis as sources for your thesis, and I'm fascinated by so many of them. So I'd like to start with the very first one. There's a lot of discussion about transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, and we talked about an interesting case yesterday. You and I talked off the air about, it's an old study. They took male rodents, they allowed them to smell cherries, they shocked them every time they smelled cherries, to the point where when they just smelled cherries, they flinched like they were going to get shocked, and their offspring inherited that awareness transgenerationally. But there's a lot of myths about transgenerational epigenetics. How much should we pay attention to? How much is meaningful?
So I would say to date, we know some stuff, but there's still a lot that we don't know. We can get into the really fun study later that was published out of David Sinclair's lab at the end of 2020, where they were able to restore vision in mice by, basically resetting the epigenetic program. That one is absolutely fascinating. But what it does, it sort of illustrates the fact that there are still many things we don't understand mechanistically. For instance, if there is a backup copy of the epigenome, which is what their theory is predicated upon, where is it stored? And how do the enzymes involved with reprogramming know what to reprogram, right? So these answers we do not have. What we do know about epigenetics is that, it's, the concept of Waddington's landscape, right, which was defined way back in, I think it was 1950s or something, maybe 1940 something. Conrad Waddington came up with this idea of epigenetics, and essentially you can think about it like all cells in the body arise, from the same place. And so if you think about like an induced pluripotent stem cell or something, right, that can become any other cell type, all the different cells in your body, your liver cell and your skin cell, contain the same DNA, right? But the liver cell is expressing certain genes so that it's a liver cell, and the skin cell is expressing certain genes so that it's a skin cell. And in that sense, that's due to epigenetic chemical marks. And so that's really important when you talk about the germline and, in development, going from the zygote, going from totipotency all the way to differentiated adult cells. So in that sense, epigenetics is important because you can think of it at a very high level of regulation of cellular identity, right? Which is necessary. And of course those regulatory mechanisms break down over time as we age. So, and it's sort of, I would say, bidirectional, because in some sense it's due to aging and can also be a driver of aging, right? This loss of cellular identity or self-hate is really important when we talk about epigenetics, and maintaining the integrity of the epigenetic information. So, if you think about it like software, with your DNA being the hard drive, as it becomes corrupted, or actually, well, you would think about it sort of in reverse, because the DNA would be the digital information, and the epigenome would be the analog information that's scratched. And so how do you restore that to its original state of information without restoring it back to zero, without completely
wiping the hard drive clean? Yes, exactly.
Right. So that was a circuitous answer.
So is there evidence that there is an epigenome that is completely tabula rasa in its original state somewhere in our body, that is being used when the blueprint is needed? Hey, we forgot where this goes, and we go back to the original blueprint and go, oh, it went here. So you're saying that does exist in us?
Well, we don't know. That's the ultimate question, and to me, that's the most exciting thing. So that's what came out of the study. I think that was the most exciting study in recent memory, but certainly in 2020. It came out in December. They came out of the Sinclair lab at Harvard, and essentially what they did, which I'm sure you read this because I sent it in, there's a long laundry list of studies. But the exciting part about it is that they were able to reverse the aging or the epigenetic information damage in the I think there are retinal ganglion cells, so say optic nerve cells in a mouse. They crushed them essentially, but over time your eyes are very susceptible to aging, as we all know. Glaucoma, macular degeneration, right, are really big things, and it's also very hard to work with. And so they said, well, we thought if we can approach this problem and reverse the damage here by reprogramming or resetting the epigenome, and rewinding it so that it gets to a state of being youthful, but not rewinding it all the way back, well, that would really be something. And the exciting thing is that what they ended up doing was by applying 3 of the Yamanaka factors instead of 4. So some folks might know the Yamanaka factors are the factors that can reprogram an adult differentiated cell into a pluripotent stem cell. So when you hear about these induced pluripotent stem cells, it's due to these application of the Yamanaka factors, and Yamanaka won a Nobel Prize for that. And so we knew for some time how to apply these factors and reverse the clock. But what would happen is you would wipe the disk clean, right? And so you don't want to do that in a living organism, because you end up with teratomas and all sorts of problems, right? When you say, oh, we're just going to rewind that eye cell completely back. Well, what if it becomes a liver cell, right? I mean, I'm drawing a very crude analogy, but that's essentially what we're saying is you're erasing its identity, and that's not good. So what they wanted to do was say, well, how can we restore vision to a youthful state, which would mean how can you go back on this timeline far enough to be healthy and clean, but not so far that you're back to square one. Right. And so what they did was they eliminated one of the Yamanaka factors, MYC, which is associated with cancerous cell proliferation. They used 3, and it's all detailed, and the details are in the paper. But long story short, what they were able to show was that they were able to restore some amount of vision in these mice, and in doing so, they showed a youthful epigenomic state. So basically a reprogramming or resetting of the epigenome and the epigenetic information there. And so the main question that I think is most exciting that comes out of that, and they don't have the answer yet, is how the heck does that happen? Right. Is there this backup copy? Right? Yes. If so, where is it? And even more interesting is you needed these things called TET enzymes in order to instigate this process, so that the cells that did not have the TET enzymes present, this reprogramming didn't work. And so, okay, well, what's the role of these TET enzymes, and how do they know to reset the program to a certain point? Again, I'm speaking in like very high level, but I think that's the fascinating part, to me at least, when we talk about aging. Because if you consider it as a loss of epigenetic information over time, then you can restore or reprogram things if you understand how and where to access that program.
Right.
Right.
What role do neonatal genes have in this process? I hear a lot of talk about epigenetics, but I don't hear anybody talking about the enlisting neonatal genes to facilitate this reversal of aging. Do they even have a role in this?
I'm not sure what you mean by neonatal genes.
So neonatal genes are the genes that are switched on when we are a fetus.
Right. So essentially, I'm not sure I understand your question, but it's not you have the same set of genes, right? So this is all about switching things on and off. Again, it's the epigenetic activity. So while you're in development as a fetus, there are certain things that are switched on or off, and as you have cells that differentiate, certain things are silenced because you want to maintain the cellular identity, and certain things might be demethylated at different times, and that's where you have the idea of development of the organism over time, which is obviously highly active during that fetal development stage and very early in life, and then you have the progression of aging, and then you also have intrinsic and extrinsic environmental factors that can influence the expression of genes. And there's different types of methylation. There's DNA methylation, there's histone methylation, there's there's the epigenome essentially is a set of chemical marks that's modified without the underlying DNA being modified, so to speak. And so those marks or modifications, will sometimes are meant to stay stable, and sometimes are changed in reaction to whatever influences the organism might be exposed to, whether that's a disease, whether that's your food, whether that's stress, whether that's reproductive years, stuff like that.
Let's talk about twin studies for a second, because they've always fascinated me. Early twin studies looked at twins who both had the BRCA gene. They lived different lives. One twin got breast cancer, one did not, which made people start saying to themselves, well, maybe this whole genetic thing isn't. And that's really what kind of pushed epigenetics into the forefront. And people started saying, well, it's what you do with your genes that determines the outcome, which was exciting. Talk about the twin study that NASA did, where they sent one twin to space and one on Earth, and then they put them back together. What did they learn from that?
Yeah, so they learned a lot from that, and in fact, that is the data that in part that came out of that study is what my thesis was based on. And so what I was doing was working with the folks who specifically looked at DNA methylation data, which is a type of epigenetic activity. In Scott Kelly, who was the spacebound astronaut in the ISS for, I think it was 340 days, so let's say a year, and his genetically matched identical twin brother, Mark Kelly, who was on the ground, who incidentally also is a retired astronaut. So I don't know what relevance that does or does not have. I don't think it's been looked at, but he had spent previously some time in space, not as much as Scott. So the whole idea was that, yes, this is an N of one experiment, which has many, many, many limitations. But it was a unique opportunity to say, let's explore this idea of comparing two people with the same, exact, genetically identical people, one who's exposed to this very extreme environment that we know induces all sorts of undesirable things, DNA damage, changes in muscle and bone density, vision changes, cardiovascular changes, right? Tons of changes, versus this ground control. And so that was what the study was predicated on. And so what I did was work with the folks who, I worked with the data that they obtained, doing whole genome bisulfite sequencing. So essentially, looking at methylation. And so what they did was they looked at methylation over time in Scott Kelly while he was on the ISS, and then in his brother Mark Kelly. And they divided it into basically 3 stages: pre-flight, in-flight, and post-flight. And the post-flight followed only about 6 months. So all in all, it was a 25-month study between the pre, the flight, and the post-flight. And then they started to look for changes. And the thing that I think most people probably heard about through the media right away when Scott came back was this telomere issue, right? Everyone's like, oh, his telomeres lengthened in space. That means you get younger in space. And I was like, guys, telomeres also lengthen in cancer cells because they're immortal. So may not be the smoking gun you're looking for, right? And since then, a lot of papers have been published on that, and including a slew of interesting ones. If anyone is interested, at the end of 2020, a bunch of papers were published looking at what does this telomere issue mean, and there's a lot to unpack there. But in terms of methylation, what I wanted to look at was, because I'm exploring this theory of the information theory of aging, which holds that it's a loss of epigenetic information over time that's contributing to aging or is associated with aging, and what influences those things bidirectionally. And so I looked at a set of candidate genes that I had identified as I thought being relevant, certainly not exhaustive, but associated with specifically DNA damage repair, and cellular senescence, which, as anyone listening knows, are 2 major hallmarks of aging. And the reason is because you're exposed to a ton of ionizing radiation when you're on the space station. And Scott Kelly also notably did a bunch of EVAs, extravehicular activity, meaning he was outside the space station fixing stuff. And every minute you spend in that environment, you are now not protected by the shield of the space station, and so you're exposed to presumably more cumulative DNA damage. So my hypothesis was, well, clearly this guy is going to age, right, at the cellular level, and therefore we should see methylation changes in these genes. What I will say is that they concluded in this original large study that was published in 2019 by Garrett Bakelman et al. They put tons of information. It wasn't just DNA methylation; it was proteomics, metabolomics, telomere information, cognitive information. They took different teams, looked at all this information. They put in this one giant paper, which I recommend anyone checking out because it's awesome. But specifically with regard to genetic expression, they did see a lot of variable expression through RNA sequencing. So it's different than looking at DNA methylation. First of all, you're sequencing this information differently, but also transcriptional expression is different than methylation. And without going too much in the weeds, the idea is essentially that methylation should be a more stable and permanent mark. So it should be a deeper look at the epigenetic landscape rather than transcriptional expression through RNA sequencing, which would be more likely to fluctuate, based on what you're inputting or the kinds of stressors you're exposed to. And so almost all of the genes that I looked at for DNA methylation changes actually did have transcriptional changes, meaning the expression of these genes was either going up or going down in Scott Kelly quite significantly, and certainly in pathways related to DNA damage repair. So, and cellular senescence genes, some of them. But what I found was that there was actually, at least with the data that I used, almost no statistically significant changes in his methylation in these genes. And that's really interesting. So a big caveat is it's an N of 1 study, right? There's inter-astronaut variation. We need way more people to be able to say anything conclusively. But what does that mean? Maybe DNA methylation isn't the best thing to be looking at in that particular context. Maybe, one idea I had was if the organism is under great stress, right, which you're not evolutionarily adapted to be in microgravity and bombarded by radiation, maybe other things are prioritized. But one would still think that genes involved with DNA damage repair and response would be differentially, potentially differentially methylated. And so We didn't see that, and so that was the ultimate conclusion of the thesis work.
That kind of says, well, just the way we thought telomeres were everything, and now it's like, well, they're something, but they're not everything. Maybe methylation isn't everything either. I mean, is that a fair thing to say?
There's so many potential explanations. It could be that. It could be, like I said, the limitation of an N of 1 study. It could be that when you're doing the bisulfite sequencing and you create the libraries, that it just didn't get deep enough coverage on some of those genes and some of those CPG sites, these individual cytosine. So that would be methylated or not. It could be for more interesting reasons that we haven't thought about yet, right? It could be for any number of reasons. And so we really don't know. So the ultimate conclusion, like with so many studies, is more studies are needed.
Yes. Yes. But it is fascinating. Good. I'm sorry. Yeah. No. Very interesting. And by the way, everyone who's watching and listening to the show, when the show is posted on our website, all the links to the studies we're talking about will be there. So you can dig into them yourself and try to figure stuff out yourself. You know, the whole time you were talking, I was thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a supplement that you could take that would address all these different things that we're covering on the show today? Oh, wait a minute. There is. It's actually called Juvicel. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/livebetter and use the code SHR, you can save 20% off. We're going to talk more about Juvicel as we get closer to the end of the show. But I wanted to throw that in there because the reality is, like, the whole time you're saying this, I'm thinking, well, isn't there anything we can do to trigger some of these things? And there are things we can do. Obviously, improve our sleep, eat better quality food, drink better quality water, think about our environment and our exposure to RF from our routers and our iPhones, and all these things play a role. But also supplementation plays a role too, because there are certain nutrients that can help us. And we're going to talk more about sirtuins when we come back. I want to discuss that and their role and because back when I interviewed Dr. Mark McCarty, 11 years ago, after he did that first rodent study, you know, SIRT1 was it. It was going to save everybody's life. You just had to take resveratrol and you're going to be fine. And it's like, wait a minute, you know, it didn't work out that way. So but all these things have a value. They all have a value, but you got to stack them together is what I'm getting at. We're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Erin Sharoni. Stay tuned. You are watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. We'll be right back. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/livebetter. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon 1 banner ad today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
I got to turn my microphone on. Welcome back. I have a quick announcement to make. We're giving away 5 Milestorm Meteors, which is a massage ball. I use it all the time at home, back of my neck, the crook of my back. It's fantastic. And this week's winner is Howard Levisky. He has been notified by email already. He is winner number 2 of the Milestorm Meteor. It's a fantastic tool to have around. You can give yourself a massage with it. If you want to enter to win one, we still have 3 more to give away. Go to shrnetwork.biz/free meteor. Put your email address in there, and you are entered to win. Don't waste a minute. Check it out. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We're talking with Erin Sharoni, who my good friend, Dr. George Touliatos, says Erin is a very attractive woman. Yeah, it's because she's aging so well. But he's pointing out that astragalus and telomerase back TA65 came out. I don't think anything really ever became of some of those telomerase activators. Are there any successful telomerase activators, and do you have them in Juvicell?
Not that I know of that I would say unequivocally activate, lengthen telomeres is a very complex process. So I would be wary of any one, a claim that said any one thing does X. You have to ask what context and stuff like that. I don't know about this astragalus connection, though. That's not something I'm familiar with.
Yeah, it was 10, 12 years ago, astragalus membranaceus was discovered, and one of the components in it was isolated and attributed to increasing telomerase presence in the body. And a company called TA65, which I think is long gone now, they isolated for this one thing that was in the astragalosides. And then it turned out that all the other things in astragalus also affect.
Of course.
It's always this way. It's like nature does things for a reason. It assembles things that, evolution plays a role in what works for us and what doesn't. And everybody wants to take the pharmaceutical model and say, well, just this. No, you got to use the whole thing sometimes. You really do.
Well, it's the entourage effect that was described by the I forget his name, the Israeli cannabis researcher. When cannabis started becoming a thing that was no longer taboo, but that was, oh wow, we have an endocannabinoid system in our own bodies. Maybe we should look into all this, right? And that science started to burgeon. And of course, certain companies or industries thought, well, we can just, a plant is not patentable, but if we can isolate a specific aspect of this plant and say that, there's a cause and effect relationship, that it can produce some specific outcome, then we can patent that and make money off of it. Well, guess what happened? To date, at least that I know of, that hasn't really been successful. And so this researcher had called it the entourage effect and was saying exactly what you just said, which is it's all components of the plant. Nature has done the work for us, or at least more than one component of the plant. And to isolate these things and then synthetically reproduce them, don't be surprised if it either doesn't work or has undesirable side effects. Yeah.
And that kind of speaks to Robert Thompson's question about cannabis. He misspelled THC related to epigenetics and longevity. So there is some evidence that there are some benefits, but I think there's a lot of discussion about the potential downsides outweighing any benefits of cannabis right now.
I think the pendulum probably is, it's swung in one direction, it's going to swing in the other direction. I'm always hesitant to say, unless we're talking about some toxin like cigarettes, or processed foods, or highly saturated fats, things that we know are bad. I'm hesitant to say, well, this one thing is all bad and this one thing is all good. It depends on the context. It depends in comparison to what. It depends on where you get your cannabis from. Is it appropriate for you, age-wise, health-wise? How is it grown? Is it covered in pesticides or is it not? So there's so many different factors, and association is not causation, right? Which we always have to be careful about. So.
There was a study. There was a study, I believe, that came out of the Ukraine about 2 years ago that I read that looked at people with dementia and cannabis, but they were eating it. It was not what's the term, hydroxylated. That's when you burn it, it hydroxylates, I think. Or something.
Decarbed. Yeah.
Decarboxylate. Decarboxylate. Thank you.
Yeah. Or carboxylated or something. I'm not an expert in cannabis.
Yes, no, it's carboxylated, right? But when you eat raw cannabis, it seemed to improve memory formation. And I want to credit everything to evolution. I'm like, yeah, we probably ate it like salad, a million years ago. And if the cannabis growers want to really open up a big business, they need to start calling on restaurants and start throwing cannabis into the salads. People would pay lots of money for a salad that's laced with cannabis, and it actually may be better for us.
They have those restaurants already, I believe. I know pretty sure there's a couple of them. A friend of mine who's a film producer was involved in doing some of these cooking shows with cannabis, and I'm pretty sure that there are cannabis restaurants, although having knowing what an edible does to you, I'm not so sure that I'd want to eat like an entire plate of pasta with THC. I guess wouldn't make it out of the restaurant. But yeah, listen, I think that I'm sure, just like many other plants, we've seen this in research, that there is a place for cannabis in the lexicon of therapeutics. What that ultimately looks like and who it's right for and when and what dose, like that, all that stuff is still being uncovered. And incidentally, it's funny you mentioned the evolutionary thing that we ate it like salad, because this is a total aside. I'm half Israeli, and someone sent me an article the other day, forget who it was, showing that there allegedly is some evidence for cannabis in the Torah. And I'm not surprised,
Right.
If there wasn't Jesus, I'm sure he was walking around smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's probably what they used as the original incense in church. They were burning.
Exactly. And then everybody stayed.
Yeah, everybody stayed. They fell asleep. They stayed there the whole day. So
like every time I go, I feel great.
Yeah, I know, right? Talk about sirtuins. They were all the rage 12 years ago. SIRT1, upregulating it, fasting. Oh, it's gonna keep you young. Has it lived up to its fanfare?
Well, like anything, I think, as we were just saying, it's so unfair to like isolate one specific ingredient or one specific enzyme or protein and say this thing is going to do this. Like everything, there's an entourage effect. So with most things, it's not occurring in isolation. The body is an elegant, complex organism. So I'm always wary of reductionist takes, although reductionism is appropriate, certainly in some cases. But sirtuins, I think if you're talking about saying that sirtuins are like the single savior in terms of longevity, then no, that's ridiculous hype. But they are absolutely critical. So there are sirtuins in humans. We have SIRT1 through 7 or something like that. And so there are a family of proteins that are responsible for regulating cellular health, and they play a very, very important role in cellular homeostasis and affect a lot of functions, including things that are really integral to aging, like DNA damage repair, inflammatory balance, your circadian rhythms, metabolism, neuronal function. And so I would say in terms of aging, probably the thing that people might recognize sirtuins for most is their role in the DNA damage repair process. And interestingly, the abbreviation SIR, so if people see the gene in yeast, it was SIR1. This is the one that you're probably referring to, Carl, that was talked about a lot way back when. SIR stands for silent information regulator. Mm-hmm. And so if you think about it in the context that we were just speaking about before the break, where your epigenome is the holder, receptacle of information that's going to give give out control the expression of your DNA, right, and send out these signals through information. Then it's very interesting that the SIR in sirtuin stands for silent information regulator, and so I would say that that's the really interesting role when you're talking about longevity. But in terms of hype, I mean, sirtuins are really important. Interestingly, they need NAD to function. They function in the presence of NAD. So people
So,
curious about.
and that's why everything is so. When people give me that, well, all you have to do is NAD. I was injecting NAD plus for a while. 25 milligrams, 50 milligrams a day. Obviously, you got to do it for years and years and years to actually see anything. And I just figured, well, I take niacin, and I know that niacin produces or can influence NAD levels downstream. And I figured, well, I'm hoping my body is doing what it needs to do there. But the reason I go into all that is because what I've learned for 16 years of doing the show is that thinking that any one thing is going to have a dramatic impact is an insult to the complexity of the human body. And it's like, yeah, SIRT is important. Things that influence, certain enzymatic cascades are important, but they're all important. They're all important. And you're not going to take one and see anything. And, I hate to be a shameless pimp for your product, but I take 6 caps a day, 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon.
Okay.
I'm taking them with the faith because I'm a long-standing believer in ginger. Gingerol is amazing. There are people that have listened to my show that have been diagnosed with skin cancer. There's probably a dozen people this year, just this short period, that have emailed me, and I tell them get a good ginger extract, organic ginger extract that's at least 5% gingerol, and just add some water to it and put it right on there and put a Band-Aid on it. It'll burn like hell the first couple days. And sure enough, Rob Regish, who's a co-host of mine, his wife Jennifer, the doctor, they wanted to cut this thing out. They said, we did a biopsy of it. It's going to grow. It was gone in a month by putting ginger. And I learned that from a study on rodents where they gave them skin tumors, and then they made the skin tumors disappear. It's not like I figured it out. So, I'm a big fan of ginger. There's ginger in Juvicel. I'm a big fan of turmeric. I'm a big fan of a lot of things. But to go out and source each one of those and take it in the therapeutically accurate doses, it's a pain in the ass. I just rather take 6 caps of Juvicel and forget about it and go on my merry way.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you like our product. We definitely have turmeric. Unless something has changed that I'm not aware of, we don't include ginger extract.
I want ginger in there. Oh no! I get that from another product. I'm sorry. I take it in conjunction.
No, but listen, ginger is great, and I buy raw ginger. And the second I feel that I'm getting ill or something, I put that thing in a juicer and I start doing shots of it, and with the turmeric, and it usually knocks things out. Yeah, listen, again, we've talked about this before. I see Juvicel as a great adjuvant to a healthy anti-aging lifestyle, or you had said, I think very appropriately, like an insurance policy. You're doing all this other stuff. Why not, add this to make sure that you're, really getting the max benefit that you can. But we've also talked about, this in and of itself is not going to turn back your clock alone. You have to do all sorts of other stuff, to your point of, things don't work in isolation. So we think Juvicel is great. It contains all of these heavily researched ingredients that have shown efficacy in various areas of, related to longevity, such as mediating inflammation and things like DNA damage repair and potentially senescence, which is something we're looking at in a study now. So I would say that, like, from a cellular perspective, at least, these ingredients have been studied individually and been shown to elicit certain effects that we believe in combination are likely to be even more effective. And generally, people are taking more than one of the ingredients that are in Juvicel together anyway. Most people are taking green tea and turmeric, and maybe they're taking resveratrol and something else. And generally, these ingredients are working on one of the 3 major pathways anyway. So
I think the surprising one in Juvicel, and it was funny because you became a sponsor of the show right after we did a show on the longevity effects of glucosamine. It's like, wait, I take that for my joints. No, apparently it improves lifespan. I was like, are you kidding me? And we're talking about very low doses. I think the effective dose was 400 milligrams or 250 or 500 milligrams a day, and people were seeing improved lifespan. That was fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, again, I think, you can often trace these things back to, one major sort of insult on the body at a cellular level when it comes to, maintaining one of these hallmarks of aging. And in this case, glucosamine is it appears to be a good mediator of inflammation, controlling cytokine release. And so we know that we live in a society with tons of chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is the source of accelerated aging. How that chronic inflammation is induced and sustained may vary from person to person. And I would say it is a result of and a cause of aging. So again, this bidirectional association. But yeah, if you're taking something that's helping to mediate inflammation in a way that's healthy and helpful to the organism, then you may see these specific benefits.
I want to take a last commercial break, and when we come back, I want to talk about the hallmarks of aging, because there's one study that you sent that discusses the hallmarks of aging, and I want to share that with the audience. But before we go, I want to remind people that you can improve your lifespan, your longevity, your health span, the quality of life by taking Juvasmil. But you got to get on board, and you got to stay on board with it. You're not going to take this and 3 months later necessarily notice, oh, my skin looks better. Maybe you will, but we're not promising that. What we are saying is that if you take it for the long haul, you will age better. And if you go to, I think I have the wrong image up here. Yes, I do. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/live-better and use the code SHR, you will save, I think it's 10% off. I lost something here. There it is. I'm sorry. 20% off, even more generous. Check it out. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Stay tuned.
Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Celluma light therapy. Celluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celluma. That's CELLUMA. And use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
This is the Superhuman Channel, doing reps with the weight of the world.
Hey, welcome back. If I sound a little foggy today, it's because I have given up caffeine again. The audience is laughing right now because I've given up caffeine at least 30 times in the past decade. And I know it's no good, but I've linked it to my body producing a lot more insulin than I need to. And this time I have to give it up for good because I'm starting to manifest some symptoms that are worrisome. And, it's like, man, and I just gave up. I mean, I was just using caffeine probably 6 days ago when I realized that this was actually perpetuating some of my symptoms. And I talked to my physician, and I just may not be a good caffeine metabolizer. I've had 23andMe done. It doesn't look like, from a genetic standpoint, that I have any problems with it, but clearly from a symptom standpoint, when I use caffeine, I have lots. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story, and then we'll get back onto the show. I'm sorry to do this to you. So one day, my audience knows that I'll take 2 Bang energy drinks and drink them right before the show. And it got to the point where 3, 6, 1,000 milligrams of caffeine really didn't elicit any nootropic benefits for me anymore. It didn't wake me up. So one day, I prepared for a show, an entire show, worked for about an hour and a half getting ready for it. And I had 2 5-hour energies, and I just did them both right before the show. This is going to give a lot of energy. I'll be animated. The show will be great. So when the caffeine kicked in, I couldn't remember. I was looking at the artwork that we had just loaded. I'm like, is that the show we're doing today? Wait a minute. I literally had a dementia moment where I didn't recognize what we just worked on. It was just an hour ago. I was looking at this stuff. I was loading stuff up, and I was like, wait, that can't be what we're supposed to talk about today. That was when I figured it out. I was like, caffeine just doesn't work for me. And fatigue.
Carl, that much caffeine doesn't work for you.
I'm a product of the 60s. I did a lot of LSD in high school. I mean, I abused everything. Elisa gets mad at me because I take everything to extremes. But anyway, so I'm a little foggy. Talk about hallmarks of aging as you look at my face as the poster child. What are they, phenotypical? Or are they what are they? What are the hallmarks of aging?
Yeah, sure. So we can list them off. And we can even group them into categories. So there was a paper back in 2013, I think, which is probably the one that I sent you, that defines these 9 main hallmarks of aging. And people listening who are like super familiar with longevity science probably already know what these are. But the paper also bucketed them into 3 categories to sort of answer your question, Carl. So the 9 hallmarks are genomic instability, telomere attrition, meaning the shrinking of your telomeres, epigenetic changes, loss of proteostasis, deregulated nutrient sensing. So this is the insulin issue you're talking about, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, stem cell exhaustion, and altered intracellular communication. There are 3 buckets: primary hallmarks, meaning causes of damage, antagonistic hallmarks, meaning responses to the damage, and integrative hallmarks, meaning culprits of the phenotype of aging. And so the primary hallmarks, meaning the causes of damage, in that bucket, you have your genomic instability, your DNA damage, your telomere shortening, your epigenetic changes, and your loss of proteostasis. In the response to damage, meaning the antagonistic hallmarks, you have this mitochondrial dysfunction, deregulated nutrient sensing, i.e. insulin sensitivity, and cellular senescence. And then in your integrative hallmarks, meaning the culprits of the phenotype, you have stem cell exhaustion and changed intracellular communication. So when you talk about aging holistically, is sort of, this decline in function of the organism over time, you can pretty much bucket different drivers and effects into one of these categories.
What about metabolic accumulation, metabolic debris accumulation? What about, like, for instance, those of us who do eat meat, lots of red meat, and there's a carnivore movement on right now, really need to pay attention to total iron binding capacity and ferritin. And TIBC is more important than ferritin because ferritin can be produced by taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and not increasing dietary iron intake. Ferritin is a chaperone. 1 molecule of ferritin can hold 1 to 60,000 molecules of iron. So ferritin isn't really adequate to assess iron. That's why you have to look at things like TIBC. But I know that I have to donate blood every couple months because I eat a lot of red meat. I don't want iron to accumulate. I think iron is a driver of premature aging. What about that whole concept that our body just accumulates so much debris as we go through this life that it fouls up cell function, it fouls up DNA replication and stuff like that?
Well, I would say before I make any further comment that, the reason that eating meat is bad for you, particularly red meat, is far beyond just what you stated. What you stated is accurate, but there are a lot of other reasons. And this idea of the carnivore movement to me, which, please God, is just a fad that will go away. I think any doctor or scientist who's promoting that should be severely criticized. And I think that other licenses should be evaluated, because that is absolute malpractice. I'm sorry. I'm not a physician, but I do understand the science. And I think that any physician worth their salt would say, if you stood up there and told people you should only be eating meat, you're out of your mind and you haven't paid any attention, and ask a cardiologist, like they'll laugh you out of the room. So I just want to say, for whatever it's worth, that if anybody has been, swayed by that propaganda, that I would gently suggest that they check out alternative sources of information, because that is certainly not something that the American Heart Association would agree with. That is not something that you've had various institutions say, come and speak out against that type of stuff. So I think that the people that are going around pushing that really need to have a come to Jesus moment, so to speak, because it's really dangerous. And it's dangerous for a lot of reasons, not just the iron issue that you brought up, but that also is a problem. And to your question about the accumulation of cellular debris, yes, autophagy is very, very important. And so as part of the aging process, systems become compromised. And when your cellular debris clearance system becomes compromised, whether we're talking about autophagy, cellular autophagy, or whether we're talking about something like the glymphatic system in the brain, which is fascinating. And I would definitely suggest folks Google that if they're not familiar with it. It's essentially like the lymphatic system, but it's occurring in your brain. And the idea, and it's a fairly new idea within the past decade, is that it's cleaning out at night, by pumping this cerebrospinal fluid through your brain. It's cleaning out some of those metabolic byproducts that are, naturally occurring during the course of your day, including tau and beta amyloid plaques, right? And stuff that accumulates and we know is associated with neurodegenerative disease. But if you think about aging overall, with regard to these different hallmarks and in these different buckets, what you generally see is a picture of dysregulation, is a picture of a loss of information, so a loss of direction, essentially, which is what happens when we get old. We forget stuff, right? And so imagine your cells forgetting stuff, forgetting their identity, forgetting how to properly regulate, various nutrients. And so I think if we think about it at a very, very basic, high level, it just makes sense, right? It's this breakdown of all of these important systems over time, which is why what you said was so important, Carl, earlier, is that we can't look at things really just in isolation. We can look at them in isolation to better understand mechanisms and how things fit together. But when we think about something holistic, like an organism aging, there's all these different inputs. And in the body, there's all these different mechanisms. And when you affect one, you usually affect another one.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's what homeostasis is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I'm going to plug the product one more time. And that is Juvicel. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/live better and use the code SHR20, you'll save 20% off. This is a wonderful product. I use it. I believe in it. And it's something that I will use for a long, long time, even if Juvicel isn't a sponsor any longer. I'll tell you that right now. And I want to thank you for coming on the show. This is fascinating. All the research that was sent to me in preparation for the show will be up on today's show page once it's published, so that those of you who want to delve into the science deeper, you can. And thank you so much for being here today, Erin.
Thanks so much for having me, Carl. As always, I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon. We're going to take one quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more. Stay tuned. Here we go. As a listener of this show, you know how important your gut is to your overall health. Bioptimizers has a potent product to heal and repair your gut unlike anything else. It's called Leaky Gut Guardian. It's powered by patented IGY Max, an egg-based protein that enhances gut health, reverses antibiotic damage, and strengthens your immune system. Available in 2 delicious powders, vegetarian vanilla and chocolate carnivore. Simply mix it with your favorite beverage. Repair your gut and power up your immune system risk-free and save 10% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/leaky gut. Don't delay. Fix your gut today. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. Mechanisms. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Welcome back. I feel like I'm going to piss some people off. I feel like Joe Biden today. I can't remember anything. Must be tough being president. I really am kicking caffeine forever. It's no good for me. It's actually messing with my brain. It's actually causing the numbness in my hands and my feet. I'm convinced of this now, and it just doesn't work for me anymore. Maybe there are some things about me personally that make caffeine not a good idea. It could be that I'm still dealing with some iron overload that I have to continue to whittle down on because I still eat a lot of red meat. I'm not completely convinced that red meat is bad. I respect anybody who has dietary concerns about eating red meat. They don't, I never want to force someone to eat red meat, but there is a lot of new research coming out now but I also eat vegetables and I also eat beans and I also eat lots of other stuff too. So I'm not a monolith. I don't just eat red meat. I eat chicken. I eat fish. I eat everything. I eat everything. I'm a, I don't know, what do you call me? An omnivore. Oh, what a great word. I'm an omnivore. But, yes, I am absolutely kicking caffeine. My gut feels better. I got to tell you, there's so many things that feel better. Just like 5 days off of caffeine, it's startling. But the hunger and desire for caffeine is real. It's like a drug. It is a drug. When I pass a Starbucks, I try to convince myself, 1 cup of coffee isn't going to hurt. And it is. It is going to hurt. I have to talk myself down from stopping and getting, I'll like the other day, 2 days ago, I was feeling a little foggy. I was like, I'll get a Bang energy drink and I'll just drink half of it. I won't. I'll drink the whole thing. I will. And then the next day I'll do another one and another one and another one. And I don't sleep as well when I use caffeine. I'm sleeping better now that I'm not using caffeine. There's just so many benefits for me personally. In fact, the gal who wrote the book Caffeine Nation, it's in my book bin over here. I have to dig it out and have her back on. I have to see what she's learned since she published that book probably 9 years ago, and what has changed in her opinion about caffeine. She was one of the earliest people to say, hey, the population drinking caffeine. Look, caffeine increases C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is an independent marker for heart disease. Caffeine increases insulin insensitivity. It makes the body less receptive to insulin, which means that your muscles have a harder time getting glucose into them. Not a good thing if you're training. Yes, it definitely does affect your brain. You feel it. And that's where the hunger comes from, that you want more. For me, the abuse of it actually started working the opposite way. I was forgetting more stuff. I felt tired, like I had exhausted all the neurotransmitters in my brain by banging caffeine constantly. And I understand that what I did was abuse. It's not what you may be doing. Maybe you are selective, or you have 1 cup of coffee in the morning or 2 cups of coffee and you're fine for the rest of the day. But I have an abusive personality. When I was a teenager in my early 20s, I did a lot of drugs. I was self-medicating. So for me, caffeine is going to have to be off the table. Coffee is even worse, believe it or not, because coffee not only raises C-reactive protein, but it also minimizes the receptors in the liver that flush C-reactive protein out of the body. So coffee actually improves inflammation. It increases inflammation. And at the same time, it causes insulin resistance. And the more you drink, the greater the effect. And it screws up your sleep, because I know a lot of people who, one of the earlier times I gave up caffeine, they stopped drinking. My friend Jim, he stopped drinking coffee. He said he sleeps so much better now, and he never went back to it. He just didn't have the Jones I had. I have a Jones. I have an addictive personality. There's no doubt in my mind about it. But it's going to take me probably about 2 weeks to be completely off of caffeine, and I will stay off of it this time. And I'll be happier for it. I'll be better at my job. I mean, I really do. I feel bleary head. George Chulialta says caffeine cures fatty liver disease. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? It doesn't cure fatty liver disease. If there's other things you can do to cure fatty liver disease. It can help against fatty liver disease. Sure. Yeah, there's lots of things. You know what else? You know what reverses fatty liver disease? Phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors. It can actually remove the fat from your liver over the course of months. But they have other problems too. So when is your water-based test? Well, we're hoping this month. We're hoping right now, this month, March, that we'll have our first batch to experiment with. And once we experiment with it, then we will start to allow doctors to prescribe it. It's moving along. It's been very hard to formulate this. This is not like a testosterone suspension where the stuff is just hanging in there. It is actually a bit more sophisticated than that, because we wanted the depot in the skin to release over a specific period of time. So we're actually using the vehicle to create a prolonged delivery. Agree on coffee, Carl. I think the creamer people use it just as bad as the coffee. Yeah, I bet you're right. Creamer is a mess of oils and other garbage too. You're absolutely right. Especially these artificial creamers, they're garbage. Yeah, but I'm done. You know, I started to think about it. I see all these sick people in our population today, in the United States. And I see all the lines at Starbucks. And I can't help but think there's a connection. I'm sorry. I feel it myself. Coffee is no good. It's no good. I don't care. You know, and so everybody who loves coffee, they're talking through their Jones, right? Because they don't want to give up coffee because they love that caffeine feel in the morning. So they're always talking through their Jones. They're saying, well, you know, if you drink a high quality coffee, or if you make sure there's no mycotoxins, or it's the coffee in its own native state is not good for the human body. I'm convinced of that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Carl, you're wrong. But they're talking through their Jones. They don't want to give up coffee. That's why they're saying that. I said metformin was a bad idea. Now all of a sudden, all these geniuses are coming around to where I was. Look, it's no good for me. There's no doubt in my mind about it. And I'm done. I'm done with coffee and I'm done with caffeine. Mike Mahler, who I have so much respect for, super good dude, super strong dude, super intelligent guy. We talked about caffeine. He's never used caffeine. Never. And he seems to be doing just fine. He doesn't look like he's missing out on any strength or any performance attributes at all with no caffeine. So, yeah, I'm done with it. I am. And I'm not trying to start a movement. I don't care if people stay with it and don't stay with it. All I'm saying is if you have gut problems, if your sleep sucks, if you're starting to notice tingling in your hands and feet, try giving up coffee and caffeine for a month and see what happens. See if you notice they get better. If they don't, then go back and drink all the coffee and caffeine you want. But everybody out there has got neuropathy today. I can't figure out why. I think I found it. I really do. All right, that's it for today. Please check out Juvacel's product. I'm going to plug it again because it really is a fantastic product. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/livebetter and use the code SHR, you'll save 20% off. It's a well thought out product. It addresses all of these different factors of aging that we talked about. And then also, if you know Howard Levitsky, tell him he won a Milestorm Meteor from Superhuman Radio. We will select another winner next Wednesday. It's not too late for you to join. shrnetwork.biz/free meteor, FREEMETEOR. Put your email address in there. Who knows? It could be you next week. All right. We got one more thing. What's that say? Amit Ram, coffee, caffeine. Yes. No more for me, Amit. No more. No more coffee for me. Shortens telomere. Coffee elongates it. Yeah, well, there's a lot of ways to elongate telomeres. A lot. Coffee is not going to be one of them for me. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for being here today.